I'm Diego Cordovez with Adam Schoenfeld. Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. We've got a young man named Howard Lederer joining us today. He's a thoughtful fellow, from what I can tell.
He's a scrappy grinder from New York.
He is, and he's played in the World Series for a while. He's played in the cash games, big, and he knows a little bit about the internet. He should be an interesting guy to talk to. So we've talked to Eric Seidel and Steve Zalatow. Both of them talked about how in the Mayfair days there was a real camaraderie and you guys really helped each other. And is there still that relationship going on now? I mean, you guys who came up together have been around. You still talk about poker, and or are you just so good now you don't?
Yeah, right. We're so good now. I don't know how much we talk real poker that much. You know, we talk about our results, and there'll be a hand here or there. But there was a true laboratory of learning, you know, and we needed it. You know, back then. So
the laboratory was all Eric taking in and not giving it. From what I understand.
I mean, because I feel like we're falling behind in the sense that definitely when I was starting to play, I had peers of mine, and we would spend a lot of time. We'd come to the World Series together, and after each satellite we played, we'd go over the hands. And the younger guys now take it to an even further level because of IM and chatting and texting, and I mean, they're really building communities. So a lot of them live together, and they're all there. Doing stuff and talking about poker and thinking about poker is
back when I got to read my one poker book, uphill in both directions, back in the real old days of poker. And I mean, I played for a year before I got a poker book, and it was like Slim's Tall Tales of Poker Book.
Right.
Right. Which actually was an important book for me because I didn't even know there was a professional poker player. I didn't know that existed for a year.
That's a key revelation.
Right, exactly, that there is such a thing.
I had Slim's book when I was 9 years old. I did.
Okay, yeah. I mean, and then I think about half a year after that, I got Skolansky's Hold'em Poker book. And the idea of a free card. I'm a year and a half into
revolutionary ideas.
That was like, wow. I mean, I'm a year and a half into my career. And then I was playing... I know it was a tournament I cashed in, but it was one of the tournaments I cashed in this year, and I'm just surrounded, my whole table was just internet geniuses, and they're all, one of them would sit down and, they didn't necessarily even know each other. It was so what's your screen name,
Right.
And then the guy gives a screen name, and then they start talking about a history they have that might be deeper than the history I have with guys I've been playing with for 20 years in terms of the number of hands I've played.
Yeah.
And they're talking about stuff, and what did you think about that play? And obviously, through email and the forums and the books and the statistical programs, it's just mind-boggling the kinds of exchange of ideas that are happening
You read
today.
stuff in posts now, which goes beyond any book that we had 10 or 15 years ago, practically.
Yeah.
I mean, real in-depth serious stuff.
I said this a couple of times in the show. When I first read Theory of Poker and he described Spade's theorem, this is shameful. I dismissed it as, yeah, that's true, but who could ever do that? And now these kids are applying it exactly, every hand correctly in most cases, and that makes them super hard to beat. So I have to go back and rethink my attitude.
But, one thing that I definitely believe is that there are 23 and 24-year-olds that have played more hands of poker than Doyle Brunson.
Oh, I think that's
Brunson, but Doyle Brunson has a lot more poker experience than them. Mm-hmm. You can't process. It's not a linear thing. It's not like, I played, 5,000 hands today, and therefore I've got as much experience as a guy used to get in 3 months, many years ago, because you have to play some poker, and then you have to think about it for a while, and then you have to grow a little bit older and a little bit mature to realize, there is a process that still has to happen in real time. It's not just a pure internet time thing.
You'll be surprised to hear that Barry Greenstein was making that same point, and that he asserted that playing all these millions of hands did not equal his own experience.
Well, I mean, it's not a linear thing.
Right, yeah.
It's a huge advantage, and it allows you to get better a lot quicker. But
it's
again,
not the same.
It's not a hand for hand.
There are some things that only time. When I was a kid, I was, of course, a super wise ass, and I remember my father saying to me...
Just as a kid, now you're
now
sensible, mature
I'm
gentleman.
sedate, but I actually am sedate by comparison. But I remember, mouthing off to my father or something, and he told me, Adam, you may be smarter than I am right now, but there are just some things that you cannot know because you don't have wisdom that can only be acquired over time. And I thought that was a bunch of bullshit then. No, but it turns out to be true.
Right.
So that's your point, Howard.
I also think it gets further in the sense that one guy was telling me how he played 24 simultaneous tournaments and all this, and he was explaining that he lined up the screen so that he wasn't even watching more than one game at a time. It would just pop up when it was his turn to act, and he had developed all these models so that, just based on what the chips were, what the hands were, he had, a game theoretically based approach to make, to act in a optimal, non-exploitatable way. And I thought this is phenomenal. I mean, this is like the revolution on Wall Street where trading programs came into play, and all of a sudden you really had a mathematically sound approach to winning without being exploitable. But that's not a real poker. I mean, that's a way that you can make a lot of money playing a lot of games on the internet, which is fantastic, and which I'm definitely not smart enough to do. But when you sit down with good players and with bad players, and now you're playing a mix of games, now it's a whole different thing.
But you're also not enough of a savant, And I'm not saying idiot savant, just savant. That you don't have this person that does that. And I think I saw like a YouTube of it. And it is like you can play 4 on one screen,
right?
Or 8, but you can't. But 24, you have to have them all lined up so they just pop,
right.
And he's clearly developed an ability to within like 1 second, to just see a screen. And not even go like, oh, I remember that hand. It's just he sees the screen. He's obviously just has instant like, okay, 2 people are in. Boom, I've got this. It's a race to me. And in like 2 seconds, he's able to process whatever that screen has to offer him at that moment, and then make a very good game theoretically good decision.
See, I've got a big screen, and I've played up to 6. Although I really am not capable of playing more than 4 successfully. I don't think. But I've lined up 6. But I'm really watching all 6 games. Like, right. I mean, to me, a big part of my game is I really am getting a feel for what people are doing, what's going on, who's tilting, who's playing what, and I just can't work it off of a statistical program. I really want to see what's going on. But there are guys who actually do play even more, and they actually are watching. But this concept of just like having them pop up and looking at that in isolation without any context, I don't grasp at all. Do you? I mean, do you ever try multi-tabling a bunch of tables, or what's been? I mean, you're definitive old school.
I have played. I think I've tried 4, and I've settled on 2.
Yeah.
I can play 2 ring games. Hold'em ring games. I mean, years back before Full Tilt, I tried playing 2 triple draw games.
Right, that's very tough.
That was impossible.
I've tried that too.
I've never tried.
I've tried that too, and I found myself, when there were no draws left,
right,
drawing with like a pair of 7s. Like, okay, I've got a great draw, 2, 3, 5, 7.
Right,
yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, so that's very hard.
It's also hard to do multiple force tournaments because you're playing
different
Raz on one and Studied on the other, and that can be confusing.
I've trained myself because horse is my favorite. For tournaments, I'll play any size tournament, and I love it, and play live. And I've trained myself where I can play multiple. At first, it was a disaster for that reason.
Well, I can't play one horse and know what game it is. Like, I'm always at least 3 games behind. We're in the stud high.
A couple hands behind.
Yeah, right. I'm still playing Raz.
So there's always this kind of, it's almost just built up, but this kind of friendly antagonism between the online players and the more, the guys who are called the brick and mortar players. So it sounds like you're really just categorizing yourself as an old school player in the sense that you play on the internet, but you're not playing the kind of the new internet style. You're playing your old style on the internet.
I'm trying to
which is
adapt
more
to that style. I'm a poker player. That's all I am. So wherever there's a game, I'm going to apply the skills that I've been able to develop. I can't beat them at their own game.
Right.
I can try and play my 1 or 2 tables and play poker the way I know how to play poker and do it on the internet or do it live. That's all I know how to do. I'm just never going to be that guy playing 8 tables and be successful at it.
We were talking about the 50K horse coming up, which Diego's going to play in and you're going to play in. And we're saying that we think there's tremendous value in that because although there are a bunch of super tough players who are great at mixed games in that, I think that tournament might be one of the highest value tournaments because there are also tons of wealthy people who just like to play in the prestigious course.
And there are a lot of pros, very good poker players who are good at 3 of the games.
Right.
And...
Or who are good at no limit and pot limit, which aren't in the rotation this year.
Right. Exactly.
The wealthy people Adam's talking about, some of them are wealthy from life. Some are wealthy from poker, from being exceptional no limit hold'em, pot limit Omaha players
They're just going to jump
who are
into the
still
horse.
really just learning these games. And there's big value in that.
There's a lot of money, particularly among these young players, and they're
willing to learn to play to learn.
They are willing to pay to learn, for sure. I mean,
credit.
I've heard that there have been a lot of pretty big horse games on Full Tilt where some of these guys are paying to learn. From what I hear, some of the the Eli's of the world have been teaching them.
And Mike Manasso.
So easy.
And I've watched some of his games, and it is true that if you're these superstars of No Limit and Pot Limit Omaha, horse is a different thing, and they're taking their shot. But
but what we always say is,
but they're going to get
they'll get better in a month.
There is no disrespect. Poker is a game you can't get good at just in a month or even a year, in my opinion. I think some people have maybe misconstrued some statements I've made about internet players to think that I don't have respect for them, or that I think brick and mortar players in general don't have respect for them. I would say that I have a lot of respect for how much time and how hard it is to get good at a wide variety of games at the level where you can sit down in the biggest cash game in the world and succeed. What I do firmly believe is that there is a player or players today that are amongst the internet young crowd, and that player will be the greatest player of all time at some point in his career, where we will just 15 years from now say, yep, that was the guy, the next Ivy or whatever. Mm-hmm. But we don't know who that guy is yet. That's all I'm saying. I'm not willing to buy into, the fact that it's Durr. And all the respect in the world to Durr. He's obviously an incredibly talented player, and it might be. Right. And if you had to pick a guy, maybe he's the guy. But it's been 1 year of him just dominating.
And a year ago, SB Rugby was dominating, and winning all this stuff. And then before that,
and by the way, SB Rugby will be back. We learn about players. These are long careers. Brian Townsend may be the guy, right? But he went through a bad streak, and he's got to work out whatever it is that happened to him.
Before that, Eric 123 is the big champion in line. I mean.
And also Eric 123, when he was Eric 123 beating everybody, he might have been the best at whatever it was that he was doing. But again, we judge careers by decades, right? And we can argue 10 years from now. Let's just say that Durr has an amazing 1 or 2 or 3 year run, but for whatever reason, maybe he just takes a job on Wall Street, or he just decides that he wants to. Go down to some third world country and do missionary work for the rest of his life. I have no idea what his life holds, and if he does that, we'll remember him fondly as one of the really great young players. Now, if 10, 15 years from now he's continued to progress and he's shown an ability to weather some bad streaks and he's developed great skills at all these other games and he's one of the great players, then you talk about him as one of the great players, and part of it is just sticking around.
Right, and evolving when the game evolves. I mean, that's the incredible thing about Doyle Brunson, which is he starts playing in these road games. He's playing in the casinos. He's even playing online. He was playing No Limit Hold'em. Now he's playing in all these mixed games.
Right.
I mean, the opportunities. Steve Zalatow was talking about the candy store. The nature of the candy store keeps changing. You specialize in one thing, and then before you know it, it's been replaced by the next.
It's not just that it gets replaced naturally. It's they change the game on you.
Right.
Okay? As long as you're the guy they think they can exploit, they'll spread your game all day long. But once you beat them enough, they're going to say, yeah, but we feel like playing this game over here today, and then you're going to have a choice. That's why there are, you just can't be a limit hold. If you want to be a great limit hold'em player, live at least, right? There might be a 1-200 game in California. I don't know what it is, but you're limited. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? And you can look you can go over there with your face pressed up to the candy store and look at the limit hold'em play. in the 2 and 4,000 game and go, I can beat that.
Right.
So what? Okay, these guys are playing all the games,
Right.
and if you want to be able to play the limit hold'em with them, you better learn how to hold your own in the other games with them. So
I think Adam makes a great point, which we made with a bunch of people, which is, online, the big games, mixed games are thriving, and we're seeing a lot of action in the middle limits. We saw some big no-limit action, especially heads up. That was like where a lot of these guys made their name and made their fortunes. And as Adam points out, a lot of times you go up on the site now, and all these guys are sitting at the table by themselves,
Dozen
waiting for someone
tables
to
with
come
one
play.
guy each.
And they won't play each other, and everyone's smartened up enough not to go play them. So if they want to make money,
and they complain about it.
well,
Right, that's
No one will play me. You know what? That's what poker's all about. You got to find a game.
now
to play.
Doyle
now
and Chip would play each other, or them and another great player, and they'd open the stores, they say.
Now
but now these guys just wait for sucker heads up, and suckers are gone.
But it's not even opening the store. It's that, okay, you want to keep making money. Now you got to go play the suckers on their terms. I'll play you. You can play my game at my stakes, or maybe it's live.
I guarantee you, if Chip Reese had sat down at the Horseshoe or at the Nugget or at the Mirage and put a big sign on his table that said, 1 in 2,000 stud, heads up,
right,
and sat there.
right.
He'd
still
be a
winning.
very, he'd be a very, very lonely man.
Right.
So
You got to start playing what the other guys want to play.
Right.
I mean, and adapt, and that's the key. Which is, I really do believe a lot of these guys, they have the intelligence, the motivation to adapt, and some don't. Some really just found a formula that works, and they can't deviate from that formula.
I had an amazing conversation the other day, just to give you and I have just so much respect for this man, the guy right over your head, Doyle Brunson. And there may never be a better 74-year-old poker player ever, I saw him, and I forget exactly, it was the day after the 5,000 Omaha with rebuys. Mm-hmm. And I asked Doyle how he did in that tournament, if he got any chips. He was playing in the next day's tournament along with me. And he said, I didn't play. I said, that's like a good juicy tournament.
Yeah.
Why didn't you play in it? He said, I just don't feel like it's my best game. I see some of these guys do stuff that I just don't quite do, and I just have, a lot of respect for what these guys do. And I mean, I know I don't play the game that bad, but I just felt like if I'm going to take a day off, I'll do it in a game I just don't feel comfortable in.
Right.
And I mean, it was just like, wow. Here's a 10-time bracelet winner, true living legend, Hall of Famer, and he's got the history to back it up. I mean, he's beaten everybody for decades in all the different kinds of games, and he was showing more humility than some guys that have been winning for a year.
Well, that's part of the
Or
key
six-
to that
or for
longevity.
6 months.
I mean,
Eric Slidell, your friend, same thing. A couple of years ago, I saw him at Bellagio, and there were some big cash games going on. With mix of no limits and pot limits, something that he's good at, obviously. And here's a guy who not only has won 8 bracelets, but he's won in these big cash games historically. And I said, Eric, how about these games? Are you playing in them? And he was like, I don't really feel I have an edge in them. It's been a while. I haven't really been, focused on poker, and the lineups have gotten tougher, and so I'm just passing on them. And I mean, that's another reason why, again, he's persevered through all the changes that have taken place.
Well, sir, look, the one thing I know for sure is that there will never be anybody who is the best at everything. It's just, that's the nature of the game. I mean, no one can be the best pot limit Omaha player, Omaha 8 or better player, stud player. I mean,
Right.
where you're the best at everything. And
Live
that
player,
means that by
tournament
definition,
player.
there's a bad game for everybody.
Yeah.
You have to accept it. I don't care how good you are. And you can be, right now we're talking about Ivy, maybe the best all-around poker player, cash turn, when you kind of, just
Right.
some
A
random,
whole amalgamation.
But even if you're that guy, there are bad games for Ivy.
Yeah.
Ivy probably shouldn't just, try and make a living playing, Sammy Farha, heads up pot limit Omaha,
Mm-hmm.
And I think Ivy would even admit that may not be where he should be trying to, But you won't find him doing it all day long either.
And even if he can win 5 times as much doing something else. So I mean, that's part of the
do
equation
you think
too.
there'll be increasing silos of specialization where guys just go into their shell and will only play their specialty?
There are always going to be specialists, but I do believe that going forward, and just that the way to create something that at least appears to be a level playing field and to create action, you have to have these mixed games. And so if you want to succeed in the biggest games will always be mixed games, where you're going to show up each day and not really even know what the mix will be. But you have to be prepared to play any of 10 games.
Right.
You've got like the 5-horse games plus high-low regular, that's 6 games. And then you're going to have to do pot limit Omaha, no limit Hold'em, deuce to 7. Well, so maybe there are 9 games really that are in the mix every day that you have to be prepared to play any of those 9 games for very high stakes against the best players in the world. I feel like that's always going to be where the biggest games are. And so they'll be specialists, and the internet, I think, gives them the opportunity to be specialists, and certainly it's great for that guy that may not really have enough poker talent to play in the biggest cash games, but he can play 8, 30, 60 limit Hold'em games,
Right.
and make a very good living. So, and there have always been players, grinding out the 8160 limit Hold'ems in Vegas, and those kinds of games in California. So I just think that there's a lower ceiling of where you can go in those silos. I don't think those silos are gonna get all that much bigger. They are what they are.
So these days, what are your best games? Where are you going to make your big mark on the World Series this year?
That's a good question. I mean, I do feel like I'm playing better. I've had a good series. I've had 3 deep runs. I'm disappointed that I haven't gotten a bracelet. I feel like I played well enough to win a bracelet this year so far. But there's still a few tournaments to go. I do see myself as an all-around player. I mean, if I had to pick a game that I'm best at, maybe limit Hold'em. But I like playing all the games. I guess if I had a weakness, maybe my weakest game is Omaha or better.
Yeah, we're similar in that respect. Those two.
But I think I play Omaha or better well enough, that I don't mind when it's in the mix, because
it's always
sometimes you're playing with people who are, even worse.
It's a funny thing, because your first bracelet was an Omaha 8.
Yes, it was.
I mean, you'd been a top player. You definitely maybe the best player who hadn't won a bracelet back then.
I had that moniker
You had
for a
that
while.
moniker?
I was one of those guys anyway.
You were, and then when you won it, it's an Omaha 8, which certainly you weren't known for. But that's the funny thing about these.
Yeah, my sister, who really is a very good Omaha or better player.
Right, probably her best game.
That
Right.
may be her best game. Really gave me a lot of crap about that for a while. And she ended up winning it.
Right, she won her own
for herself.
But I'm definitely. I feel like this fall I'm going to start playing in the cash games again. I just feel like I'm ready. Like during the World Series of Poker this year. I mean, maybe my number one biggest change was I leave my phone. My BlackBerry, so it's not just a phone, it's email.
Of course.
I leave that in the car. I don't even bring it into the Rio. That's really helped.
You don't even have the temptation to turn it on.
You can't even.
Just bringing it would be a huge anchor, because you glance at it even on breaks, and now you have anxiety about what's going on. Ignorance is bliss in terms of outside interests.
And focus is huge. So I feel like I've had the focus. I feel like I've had some days where at the end of the day I'm just exhausted, and just from the poker.
Right, mentally exhausted.
Just mentally exhausted.
Are you playing almost every day?
Yeah, except for I didn't play the last 2 days. Just kind of getting ready for the horse, and the fact that I'm not quite 50 yet. So.
What's your the seniors event was the only event they were running.
Yeah.
What's your motivation for bracelets? It's not so much the financial motivation. You've won and you're well known, but is it adding to your legacy, or just?
I love the game of poker. I love the challenge, and I don't feel like I was done with the challenge of playing in the biggest cash games. Mm-hmm. When I kind of pulled away to get involved in more business stuff. Mm-hmm. But and also talking about picking your own spots. I think I made a very good decision. I haven't played in the big cash games for 4 years. And I feel like I'm not a good enough player. I don't know that anyone's a good enough player to, wake up at 8 in the morning, take 4 or 5, tough business calls, conference calls,
travel around,
and answer 300 emails, and then come in and try and beat Phil Ivey and Patrick Antonius and Doyle Brunson. I can't do that.
I don't think that can be done, by the way. You might do it one day, but you can't do it.
So I wasn't going to try. But, I think I will have the focus starting this fall, and I want to take on that challenge again. I love playing in that game.
There's more of an appreciation now about the cash games and the fact that the absolute best players are in the big cash games, and that now there's enough even media coverage of the cash games to really give the proper recognition to the guys who are triumphing there. So,
yeah, but see, for me, the cash games have never been about recognition. It's about that personal challenge, making a living, and building maybe a legacy that your peers understand. So publicity, that easy number they can put on your tombstone. They're going to put the number bracelets there. So I am kind of motivated to make that number more than 2. 2's not a bad number, but 5's a lot better.
Yeah, right. 8's better.
Yeah, 8's better than 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Phil Hellmuth would agree with you.
Yes, he would.
He would have to.
Anyhow,
and he's made that view clear.
We're not going to keep you from your efforts in that department, but we appreciate you coming by, meeting with us, and we'll look for you in the remaining tournaments, and then back in the big games this fall and the rest of the year.
I feel like I got one more deep run in me, so.
Well, we've got the 2 most important tournaments coming up, the 50K horse and the main event. Yeah. And depending on when we broadcast this, we'll see how it comes through. Anyway, thanks a lot, Howard.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. Write to us at thescoop@cardplayer.com. Look for us on Card Player TV.
Two bracelets. Awesome.
Well, these aren't easy to win. Remember this one like it was yesterday. My opponent had me down to my last. Sorry. Anyway, it's down to my last few chips. So I had to call.
We play at FullTiltPoker.com.